Okay, so this is probably going to be the toughest 1 year later video that I'm going to have to make for a very long time, and that is including all the ones we have made in the past. Let's go over and skip 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the 2020 NHL Entry Draft and discuss a player that was one of the most surprising picks in the top 10, and in the way that he has developed since then is, honestly, still one of the most surprising picks in that range. Let's talk today about a guy whose middle name is most likely not Luke. In the Buffalo Sabres 8th overall pick from 2020, his name is Jack Quinn. He is a top pick from the 2020 NHL Entry Draft, and if we're going to go over the profile here, talk about what he has done since the Entry Draft last season, we need to get some context first. Jack Quinn is a 6 feet tall, 176-pound right-wing, left-wing player who is playing out of the OHL's Ottawa 67 system. You take a look at his birth date, September 19th, 2001. He was 4 days away from being eligible from the 2019 NHL Entry Draft. Instead, he was taken in 2020 because the cutoff is September 15th. He was one of the absolute oldest players in the entire NHL Draft in 2020, and compared to guys that were a lot younger, like Quinton Byfield, for example, who was an August 2002 birthday, you had to take a look at that and compare some of these players in the context of, okay, Jack Quinn is almost a full year younger than some of the youngest guys in this draft, and even though they might be in the same draft, hey, guess what? 9, 10, 11 months of development can be really beneficial to younger players who have an edge in terms of their development going forward. So that certainly was an immediate knock on Jack Quinn and his profile just from his own birth date. You also have to take a look at the fact that in his Draft Minus 1 season, where he was, may I remind you, just a few days away from being included in the previous draft, he had himself a debut year in the Ottawa system of 32 points in 61 games played. Now, if you assume that Jack Quinn was 4 days older and he put up these numbers in the 2019 draft, he might not have even gotten drafted anywhere in the top few rounds because, let's be honest, 32 points, 61 games played, sure, it's okay for a guy that was 17 for the majority of the season, but still, Ottawa was stacked and Jack Quinn wasn't really putting up too many big numbers until his draft year rolled around, where in 2019-20, where he was 18 for literally the entire season, except for a few days at the beginning, he put up 89 points, 52 goals, 37 assists in 62 games played. Now, the Ottawa 67s were really good still, and you're going to be quick to point out, wait a minute, Ottawa, that's the Marco Rossi team, isn't it? Yeah, you're right about that. But Jack Quinn actually was not playing on the first line with Marco Rossi, Garefa, and Keating. He was on the second line over there with the 67s, and it worked out really well because Marco Rossi in the top line, they would get all the tough assignments, they would get the big-name players on the other team suiting up against them, and Jack Quinn would go out there and get the second and third line matchups. Jack Quinn, as you can tell from the profile right here, an absolute goal scorer at heart. His player profile in the OHL was nuts because this guy could just hold on to the puck for as long as he wanted, shoot it wherever he wanted, and it would go in like half the time. He had a few really specific sets of skills that allowed him to hold on to the puck so long with a lot of separated space from opponents, and his shooting ability was unrivaled. Now you could say Alexander Holtz had a really good shot as well, and I think Holtz had a better one-timer, but when it came to the ability of just holding onto the puck, just skating around all the other junior guys that were there, Jack Quinn did that with ease in a way that Holtz was unable to because, Holtz was playing SHL competition. It's one of those things where if you swap the two guys, I think Holtz could have produced as much, if not more, goals than Quinn because I think Holtz just had a little bit more of a drive to his game than Quinn did. To me, just when I watched Quinn in his draft season, I felt like he was almost in a position where he was so good and he was so skilled at scoring goals that he almost played like he knew he was that good. So he would just hold on to the puck, go around a few guys, shoot it, and boom, it's in the back of the net, he's got himself another goal. It was engagement issues like that where I kind of thought to myself, okay, we haven't really seen Jack Quinn when the going gets tough, you know? He's going out there playing easy matchups, getting a whole bunch of goals, and he's having a blast. But when it came to the struggles that other players had when playing against bigger, tougher competition, we hadn't seen that yet out of Jack Quinn. That wasn't a knock on his game, it was just something that I personally had a note in my mind. Quinn also played penalty kill, he was really smart off the puck as well, so his overall on-ice ability was just pretty good all around. Which is why, if you take a look at where Jack Quinn was ranked to go in the 2020 draft, hey, he was ranked to being a top-round prospect. He was ranked 10th by ISS, McKeen's, and TSN and Bob McKenzie, 20th by Future Considerations. However, he was ranked 7th by TSN and Craig Button, which is actually a lot more accurate to what actually happened. Craig Button even tweeted out that he thinks that out of any players that might break into the top 10 that no one is expecting to do so, he called it out in March. Jack Quinn, he's the best goal scorer of the 2020 draft, in his opinion. And he went 8th overall ahead of Marco Rossi. Now, that was a really big deal at the time, because Marco Rossi was the best player in the CHL. He had just an absolutely fantastic ability to take over shifts and do everything with the puck against better competition, because he was getting first-line minutes against other big top players in the OHL, and it was astounding to so many hockey fans that Jack Quinn went over Rossi at the draft. You also have to remember that Marco Rossi's 5'9", Jack Quinn is a lot taller, so there's that. A year removed from the draft, though, the first thing you're going to recognize about Jack Quinn in his profile is the World Juniors. He suited up for Team Canada, the absolutely stacked Team Canada that made it all the way to the finals without losing a game, and then guess what? They lost the final game because Trevor Zegras had a plan. Jack Quinn went out there as the 10th best point producer on the team with 5 points in 7 games played, 1 goal and 4 assists. The goal-scoring nature that you saw to Jack Quinn in his game in the OHL the previous season wasn't really there at the World Juniors. Now, to be fair, the World Juniors was kind of a stacked super team of Canadian prospects with Cousins, McMichael, Krebs, Byfield, Tomasino, all these guys really just doing extraordinarily well. Jack Quinn wasn't even really put in that role to being a number 1 goal scorer anyway. He was kind of used more in a two-way penalty-killing kind of role, which fit in with his skill sets for sure, don't get me wrong. It's just if you were looking for big numbers, he didn't really produce as much as we wanted him to. That's okay. After the World Juniors, though, hey, guess what? The OHL didn't actually play. We had ourselves the entire suspension because of the pandemic, and guys that were in the OHL were actually given the go-ahead to play in the AHL. Jack Quinn was one of these players, so he suited up for the Rochester Americans, the Buffalo Sabres AHL team, where he went over, had 15 games played, and he posted up 2 goals and 7 assists. Now, his time in the AHL, to me, was super valuable. Even heading into this, I was like, okay, all the concerns that I personally had when I watched Jack Quinn play, especially compared to Marco Rossi, who was on a different line, we're going to see how well he is able to translate when it comes to taking his OHL skills of goal scoring and puck carrying and two-way defensive responsibility into the American Hockey League against men. He put up 2 goals in 15 games played and had a total of 9 points. Now, that is honestly a pretty good season if you take a look at what Jack Quinn is in isolation. He was a 19-year-old player who had 9 points in 15 games played. You do the math on that, 9 divided by 15 multiplied out by, 76 games in the AHL, he would have had 46 points, which is not bad for a teenager who isn't really supposed to be playing in this league. But his season was actually cut short, because he actually had to get himself surgery to repair a hernia. According to Lance Lasowski over here, the lower body injury that he had, which ended his season, had been affecting him ever since the camp before the World Juniors. The timing of the surgery, back in April, would allow him plenty of time to train this summer. So, all the stuff that we had with Jack Quinn last year, where he was this really good goal scorer, challenging Holtz for the title of the best scorer of the draft, and a guy that a lot of people questioned how he went ahead of Marco Rossi, his own teammate, went 8th overall, and he had a season that some people would look at and say statistically wasn't really all too great comparative to other players in the same age range in the same time span. But Jack Quinn had this really big thing that was affecting him the entire season at the World Juniors, at the AHL level, this hernia that he needed to get surgery for. And now, as a result, it's like, okay, these numbers right here, are they really an accurate representation of the profile Jack Quinn has? And that's kind of why I'm labeling this video in a really weird way. I'm saying that the draft pick last year was a surprise, but his profile right now is still enigmatic because we don't know how good he really can be when he's at 100%. He'd been playing the entire season. Let's say, okay, a hernia is a lower body injury, it's in his hip. Let's say he was playing at like 65-ish% the entire year. Jack Quinn to me is a player who, if I had the chance, I would have probably drafted him somewhere in like the teens in the 2020 draft. But the way he progressed ever since the draft last year is so ambiguous due to the instability of his health the previous few months that we don't even know if this was the right decision. So this is one of the toughest videos I had to make, talking about Marco Rossi. Talk to me in the comments what do you think about his profile as a prospect. Do you still think he has top goal scorer NHL potential, which was what Craig Button said he had back in the draft? Do you think he can score 40 goals at the NHL level? I'm not really too sure. He only had 2 goals this season. Goal scoring supposed to be his bread and butter. In the year 2021, he only had 3 goals in total. He had himself some really bad health, but it would be foolish to write off a 19-year-old at this stage of his career. So talk to me in the comments what do you think about Jack Quinn and the entire prospect profile he has. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.